October Xero Developer Hangout. I'm Dan. We've got a pretty exciting show for you guys today. We have myself and Brooke from Ecosystem. We have Adam on Release Desk, and all the way from Melbourne, Australia, Riley James.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. So I have some familiar faces, obviously, but a couple of new faces. There's me, Dan Young, so I'm Product Manager for Developer Platform. I'll be giving you some updates in future on things like the Developer Center, app.xero.com, and what we're doing in that space. Brooke, you want to give an update about what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. So should we flick over to the slide deck?
We should.
So yeah, I'm Brooke, the Global Product Marketing Manager for our ecosystem. So in that role, it entails looking after Xero strategic marketing for all of our ecosystem partners that integrate with us globally. So I've been in the role for nearly 4 months now, and before that was a senior product manager at a bank.
The same bank.
Yeah, we've jumped ship. So yeah, I'm just going to give you a brief update on some events that we've got coming up and one we recently attended. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of API Days, but it's a global conference that happens all around the world. Next one I think is in Paris, and they had their inaugural one in New Zealand a few weeks ago on the 19th of October. And there I gave an update on Xero's API journey. So over the last 7 years, how our journey has, how our API has evolved over time, and what are some key tips and tricks that we've learned over time too from our journey in the API land. And yeah, it was quite interesting in New Zealand. It seems that there's a lot of companies, especially at the enterprise level, really starting to get started on the API journey. So hearing about what Xero's done to date seemed to be quite good for them. And then, so that's essentially API Days. There's probably one in town near you if you're ever keen to go check one of them out.
Was there much sort of government or other financial services interest?
Yeah, no, there definitely were. So there were a few of the New Zealand banks that presented. There was New Zealand's Ministry of Business and Innovation who also presented there too. But it was really just showing, the start of how they're setting up their API strategy and how they're trying to get that buy-in, both at the government level, but also from other enterprises, and how they're actually going to use that to move forward and really understanding it's going to really impact their business model. So it's quite fascinating. So the next event we've got up though in Xeroland is XeroCon London. So every year Xero runs 4 XeroCons in Australia, New Zealand, UK and US, and we had the Australian one in August this year, and that had about 1,500 attendees and 80 of our ecosystem partners exhibit there. And so now there's the opportunity to join the XeroCon London bandwagon. So XeroCon London dates are the 8th to 10th of February, and obviously it's going to be based in London over those 2 days. And if you're keen to get involved, we sent out a recent developer EDM and gave some details out, but if you're keen to get involved to get your brand, your company, some exposure there, there's someone you can email, and that's Nina, Nina @xero.com. So that's Nina, Nina @xero.com. And if you're keen to learn more about XeroCon London, just check out our website, just type in XeroCon London and you'll see all the information you need. And don't hesitate to ask any questions here too.
I think our resident, UK resident evangelist, James Coleman, will be available at that XeroCon too. So
yeah,
cool. Alrighty. Hey, thanks, Brooke. That's awesome. So if we go back, perhaps to our agenda, Adam. So new kids on the block. So that's cool. So we've done that. API Days and XeroCon. We're going to move shortly to the release desk, and I have a feeling there might be some pretty good news coming from Adam today. Just before we do that though, I just want to kind of give a bit of a reminder to all the developers about a couple of things. We sent out a couple of notifications, maybe it wasn't the latest EDM, was it? It was a month before, about accepting the latest developer terms and conditions. So just a reminder about that. You can go into your profile on developer.xero.com, actually app.xero.com, and do that. And the other one is just a reminder about us migrating to SHA-2 SSL certs. That's happening in March. If you do need to sort of understand more about that and how that might affect your integration and things, just go into our community, and there are some other pages on developer.xero.com as well. Cool. Alrighty. So without further ado, should we move to release desk?
Let's do it.
All right, Adam, take it away.
All right, cool. So yeah, busy month or a couple of months since our last hangout. Shipping some cool features. Two of the bigger ones being the link transactions endpoint, which enables the billable expenses functionality in Xero, and the other one being tracked inventory. So that's now fully supported via the API. I'll go into those two in a little bit more detail in a moment. A couple of smaller things. We now return the type of bank account on the accounts endpoint. That's causing issues for a few people, not being able to tell the difference between credit cards, bank accounts, PayPal. That's now on there. And you can now set the payment terms on your contacts. So how often the default is they pay after invoice date and things like that. That's all supported on puts and posts. And as usual, plenty of bug fixes. Check out the release notes on the accounting API for more information there.
So let me just flick over just quickly, Adam. So how do we, I guess, elicit the requirements from our developers? Like, how do we prioritize these features?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of things that feed into it. Obviously, there's the user voice page, the Xero user voice, which is a big component of it. There's people like Riley in each region, our developer evangelists, who are talking with you guys every day. So I catch up with those guys once a week. So that feedback constantly comes in through that channel. And then there's the general Xero roadmap. So something like billable expenses is a good example. New features coming out in Xero. We're trying to move to a new API first sort of approach, so that day one, as soon as they're available in the app, you can use them in the API. So
cool.
Yeah, good success story around that particular feature, and hopefully the way things will work going forward.
Nice. I mean, obviously we need to balance a lot of this too with some of the technical, I guess, architecture stuff as well. I know there's a bit going on in that space too. So.
Yeah, it's been a big year for that sort of thing, scalability and performance as we're growing the platform. And so, yeah, the release notes often looks a bit quiet because we're not shipping a whole bunch of new features. But rest assured, there is an API team that's constantly working on the API.
Under the hood features.
That's it. That's right.
All right.
But fortunately, I've got a couple of cool things to talk about today.
All right, awesome. I'll flick back to your deck for you.
Oh yeah, just before I get into those two features, what's coming up next? We're just about to ship it, reversing payments on credit notes, prepayments and overpayments. So you can already do that with invoices, but we're extending that. Deleting items is the only part of tracked inventory we haven't shipped yet. That's ready to go. Just look out for that next week. Billable expenses, as I'll explain in a moment. At the moment, it's just for purchase invoices, but pretty soon you'll be able to do that with spend monies, which is the bank transactions endpoint. And finally, purchase orders with an exclamation mark. It's really been getting a lot of heat on user voice. It's been just racking up the votes. So there'll be a lot of people keen to get onto that, I'm sure. And we have actually started, I've been teasing it for a long time, but there's actually been code written now, which is really cool.
Oh, we've lost Brooke. She, I think, just ran out of the room in a coughing fit, but I'm sure she'll be back shortly. Yeah. Sorry, embarrassed you. Awesome. That sounds wicked. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of sort of posts on user voice for things like inventory and purchase orders. It's nice to get some good news on that.
Yeah.
Alrighty, cool.
So let's dig a little bit deeper now. Just wanted to sort of explain a bit more about tracked inventory and how it works in Xero and sort of what the differences are and what some of the challenges might be if you're thinking about using Xero tracked inventory in your integration. So just stepping through, here's an example of what an item previously always looked like in Xero. So it's a code, a description, and some defaults for your sales and purchases, price, tax, account. The first thing we've done is we've added a few more fields around that, which is apply to both the non-tracked items and the inventory items. So there's now an internal name that's used in Xero for that item. There's a purchase description now, which goes along with the sales description. We return a new Boolean value down the bottom, which is it tracked as inventory. And there's also two Booleans that you can actually set, which is sold and is purchased. And that basically decides whether or not it's shown on a sales invoice or a purchase invoice in the Xero UI. So that's a couple of cool new things that apply to all items, whether they're tracked or not. When it comes to looking at this new kind of tracked inventory item, it gets a bit more complicated again. The first thing you'll notice down in the purchase details in the middle there is you don't set a default account code. There's a new thing called the cost of goods sold account code, and that's used to track your inventory expense. There's also, outside the purchase details, a inventory asset account code, which tracks the value of that inventory asset. And you can also see that we return the total cost pool and quantity on hand of that asset. Now, those fields are read-only. The only way you can affect those is by putting through actual inventory transactions, so buying some inventory or selling some inventory, make those go up and down. And this is what the new tracked inventory item looks like in the Xero UI. So you can see basically all those new elements exposed on the UI. And down the right-hand side, the quantity on hand and total value, which we return by the API as well. And I mentioned up front that there's a few gotchas or things to be careful about when you're trying to make a decision whether syncing items with Xero tracked inventory is a good idea or not. Because basically, we've built this feature in Xero to meet sort of fairly basic requirements. And we'll continue to encourage people with more complex requirements to use add-ons. So a few of those things are, we don't support negative quantities. So if you support, say, drop shipping or anything like that, or allow people to sell things before they've processed the purchase invoice, that's not going to fly in Xero. They're going to hit validation errors. There's no hard limit on how many tracked inventory items you have, but we recommend people keep it to around 4,000. So if you've allow lots of inventory items, it's probably not a good idea to sync them all across. Inventory items in Xero are quite flat. There's no sort of hierarchy of groups or classes, and it also doesn't go below the item, so there's no skews or variations or colors or anything like that. So if you sort of have that hierarchy of inventory items in your side, you really have to think carefully about how that maps across to Xero. No different locations, so we have no warehousing, bins, things like that. So that won't come across. And also, if you're already doing some inventory accounting, we only offer the one model, which is the average cost accounting. So we don't do first in, first out, and we don't do last in, first out, things like that. So if you're currently offering those different ways of accounting, it's probably not a good idea to track inventory across. When you would use the tracked inventory items, it's more likely if you don't do any inventory accounting on your side and you just want to make use of Xero's functionality, that's cool. That's what the use case is. But if you have quite deep inventory functionality, you're going to have to think carefully about some of these challenges and maybe just continue putting in the accounting transactions as you might be doing today. Cool.
All right. Nice one.
Next up on the block, billable expenses. Just to be confusing, in the API we call these linked transactions. The reason for that being that we may extend the endpoint in future to do different type of linked transactions, I guess. But at the moment, billable expenses are the only type. And what is a billable expense? It's basically when a business buys something with the intention of charging it on to a client. So when you process the purchase, you can tag a client on it basically and say, remind me to charge this guy for this next time I raise a sales invoice. So I just sort of go through a quick example of the purchase side of things. So this is just an example of a normal purchaser's invoice coming into Xero with one line of something that they want to charge on for $100. That's all cool. That creates an invoice in the Xero UI. Looks something like that. That's nothing new. This is the response from that invoice creation. I just want to point out a couple of key things that you need to get back from that response after you've created the invoice. The first thing being the line item ID, because billable expenses work at a line item level, and also the invoice ID that you'll need, so that you can then do a post to the new link transactions endpoint. And so this is basically the creation of the billable expense. And so the invoice ID then becomes the source transaction ID, and the line item ID becomes the source line item ID. Again, why do we give it a generic name and be confusing is because, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be extending this soon to spend money bank transactions and maybe receipts in the future as well. So it's a generic name. And then the third element on that that post as the contact ID of who I'm going to be selling this to. So once I post that link transaction, if I came back to the Xero UI, it's quite hard to see there, but on that line item, there's some new grey text, which now says that this is actually a billable expense for Martin Hudson. And then the next time I go in Xero to raise a sales invoice, I get that blue text just below the contact, which says one billable expense is there to be added to this invoice. I'll click on that and it'll pull through the details from the purchase invoice onto my sales invoice. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for the purchase side of things. The sales side's a bit different. If you add on create sales invoices, you'll probably need to retrieve all the link transactions that have already been created for that contact, and then do a similar thing, display them to the user and say, would you like to add this to your sales invoice? Then once you've created the sales invoice, you can update the link transaction to sort of close that link. But there's heaps of information up on the Developer Center, and I've done another video guide for that, which goes actually end to end. I don't want to go into too much detail now, but check that out on the website for more info.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, cool. Got anything else for us?
Oh, that's it. Sorry, I think that should be enough for now.
Should be enough. Okay, awesome. So that's some things that we have done. We have shipped. Is there anything cool coming up that these guys might be interested in?
Yeah, as I said, the big focus now is purchase orders. Obviously, people have been screaming about it for a long time, so it's about time we got off and did it. So yeah, hopefully it'll be an early Christmas present for everyone.
Ooh, making promises. Watch out. Okay, awesome. They'll be hounding you if that's not delivered, Adam. So good luck.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So thanks a lot for that, Adam. That was awesome. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the ecosystem. So around add-ons and anything new that's come in the last sort of month and a half. And we have Riley James to talk through that.
Hey, welcome from Melbourne, Australia. Flew all the way in for this one. So it's been quite a good ride.
Yeah, how have you, talking about seeing the sites, how's your trip been?
Yeah, it's been good. We've been seeing the sites of Wellington. Been to everywhere that serves meat in Wellington so far. I think Melbourne's got a bit of, catching up to do, I think, on a few of these places. The heat is definitely coming on.
Awesome.
But on the integration front, we've had quite a few during the last couple of months. We made a lot of these announcements at XeroCon, particularly the top four there: Insightly, MindBody Online, Avalara, and Shopify. So they were announced in August at XeroCon in Sydney, but the integrations were still in progress at that point. But they're now all out. So Insightly is a CRM based in the States, really good for small businesses. MindBody Online is a pretty well-known name in the health and wellness industries. Now you can connect it straight with Xero, and we can handle all the accounting side for you. Avalara is a big company in the States that handles tax filing. So all your sales tax, just makes it really simple to handle that. And Shopify is a very well-known name in the e-commerce space, and they've built a really, really nice integration into Xero, which we are going to deep dive into in a couple of minutes. Beyond that, I've had heaps of other partners join. Some in particular that I worked with in Australia was Quilla, who have a really nice integration with their product that turns quotes and proposals into basically online documents or websites. It's really good for any creative industries or freelancers and agencies and the like. You need something really that really sells, your proposal or the quote or whatever the job you're working on. Something very, very modern. It's the perfect solution for that. And they're a little startup out of Sydney, so it's good to support some locals. Pocketsmith was another one for anyone who's still hurting from the Xero Personal Edition that got dropped. Pocketsmith is a great alternative to that. Integrates now with Xero. You can see your net worth, which is a great feature, unless, like me, it's probably negative. But if you have a positive net worth, maybe check that out. But it also integrates quite well into Xero with an expense feature. So if you do a lot of expenditure into a Xero company, you can use it to very easily track your receipts and net worth and all that sort of stuff personally, and then easily expense it into Xero as well. So quite good. And Promptly was another cool one out of New Zealand that does invoice reminders with some incentives around early payment, so they can easily handle discounting for early or on-time payments rather than just trying to punish those that don't. So reward some people, and it integrates all into Xero with the credit note functionality, which makes it quite slick. And we also had the announcement of the financial web at XeroCon, and Moolah, Get Capital, and Osforex launched through that. And we're going to talk about them a bit later.
Awesome.
So Shopify, I just wanted to sort of shout out to, just on the next slide, the Shopify integration. If anyone is looking at sort of a best-in-class integration, particularly in e-commerce, but they do handle a few things quite well, definitely one to look at. Just go through and check it out and see how you could maybe apply some of the things that they've tackled in their integration. Taxes is one thing that comes up quite a lot in these integrations, particularly if you want to try and support the entire world through one integration. The Xero API does all that, which is really great, but it's mainly the taxes where you have to start sort of localizing how your product handles them and how Xero handles taxes. So one of the big things is selling internationally, particularly in Australia and New Zealand. When you export something, you don't have to charge taxes on it. So it's really important where the customer is that's making the purchase. Shopify has a really good way of handling that. You can set up regions for your taxes, and then you can have overrides on top of that. So you can set your taxes per region and then apply overrides to say items that don't have tax or have different taxes. You can apply different shipping taxes in each region, which makes it really easy. And it's often something that's sort of left out there. So you can see you can handle the taxes on inclusive, exclusive basis through their product, and you can decide whether or not you're going to charge any taxes on shipping. So yeah, just a good way if you're struggling with that, or customers are not finding it flexible enough, then maybe check out how Shopify handles that. Outside of that, if we just jump to the next slide, this is a great example of after they go through the setup process, which is really simple. This is what customers will see every time they land to try and export something. So these are the most common features that people ask for. I want to be able to export between certain dates. That's easy to handle. And then secondly, both primarily accountants, they really want to know exactly what the integration is going to do to Xero. Because particularly if they're suggesting the add-on, they want to make sure it's not going to make a mess of things, or the way that they've set up Xero and the way that they use Xero is compatible with this integration. So all of the functionality that it states there on how it's going to send invoices to Xero, how it's going to apply payments, how it's going to use credit notes, is all based on how it was actually set up. So that dynamically changes if I decide to send payments from Shopify using their payment service over to Xero. It'll give me some extra options, extra notifications here, and state that the payments will be sent and here's where they'll be sent. So I haven't seen a lot of add-ons do this in the product, but putting this sort of information both on landing pages so that accountants can see it before they sign up, and also in the setup process for where the user is going to do these exports, so it's really clear to the user and the accountant exactly what's going on. And lastly, some information about what's actually been exported. This shows you sort of a historical view, but it also shows you this as you're doing each export. So it says, 7 orders have been sent, 5 payments have been applied, and all that sort of stuff. So just really informative and keeps users very aware of what's going on, and it really reduces any support issues and support inquiries, which is always great. And finally, we're going to have I just wanted to quickly chat about some of the work that's been going on in Australia on the financial web. So this is an initiative that was announced at XeroCon in Sydney, and we're just kicking it off at that stage, and it's becoming more and more formalized as we go on. We launched with 2 of the preferred partners that we have in the financial space, and that was Moolah and Oz Forex. So Moolah is an alternative lender, a non-bank lender, as we call them in Australia, and they enable businesses to apply for a loan, get a drawdown, and the whole process is integrated into Xero. So there's actually no human involvement in their loan process. Just connect to Xero. They decided they're going to loan you some money, and then the drawdown amount goes straight back into Xero. So it's really slick. And Oz Forex is foreign exchange service. Just makes it really easy to pay your supplier bills if they're in foreign currency, and you get a really good rate through them. And as part of being in this preferred program, they've both provided exclusive offers. Outside of being a preferred partner, if you're in the financial services space, you can definitely build an integration. The first step is to contact our financial services team in Australia, and we have some commercial terms. We just want to sort of, because it's related to financial transactions, we want to do a more in-depth review on your business and how these things are working. And but it's definitely an open program. So just because there is an alternative lender and foreign exchange provider, we're still looking for more partners in those spaces. So if you are interested, there is a webinar coming up on the 16th of November. This isn't focused directly at developers, but it will give you some insights into how these products work and what the program's all about. So if you're interested, November the 16th, there's no landing page up just yet, but if you look out for that in the next couple of days, it should be coming up. And yeah, if you are interested, you're doing anything in foreign exchange, alternative lending, insurance, payments, so that could be supplier or purchase payments, definitely get in contact with, for now, just contact api@xero.com, but we will have a specific space for financial service partners to go soon. And that's an update from what's going on in the ecosystem.
Nice. Hey, thanks, Riley. That's awesome. So these partners that you're talking about in our partner program is so that there's like a certification process, right?
Yeah.
So what would if somebody was new to the marketplace or wanting to get involved in that after they've built an integration, what sort of steps would they need to go through?
It would be best to get in contact with us before you build the integration. So the financial services partners, as we're working with them, they're currently focused in Australia, sort of testing the model there, and then we're going to look at how we're going to roll it out internationally. But it is best to get in contact immediately because we want to talk through. Part of the commercials process is looking at the business, looking at the use cases, and trying to develop a solution as a best of breed. So we've started through the integrations that we've built and reviewed currently, we're sort of turning them into best practices. And we basically give you a document that says, if you want to do some alternative lending using the Xero platform, here's exactly how you can use the Xero API. Here's all the data you can get. This is the expectation that we've set for customers. So this is sort of what you need to meet.
Awesome. Cool.
It's a bit different to the existing partner programs, which is a bit more freeform, but yeah, it's been going really well so far. So
nice one. All right, awesome. So okay, now have you got any questions that have come in?
Not on the Hangout page itself, I don't think.
Okay, there was one that came in sort of before today, and it was around robustness of APIs and how you actually make your API really robust. I think they were talking about the Xero API specifically, but I don't know, Riley, are you able to talk to that at all?
How do we make it robust? Well, one thing I've seen is it's not necessarily just the APIs that need to be robust, but it's also the wrappers around it.
Right.
Often we find customers might be, or partners, I guess, developers, are having an issue with the API, but we sort of later find that it might actually be the wrapper or how the wrapper works, and it's not actually a limitation of the API. So it's sort of a part and parcel. Just because you have a great API, you need to have great support all the way down to the stack, I guess.
For sure. One of the cool things that we're going to be focusing on in the next few months, probably 3 to 6 months, is enhancing a lot of those services around the API. So I guess my role is to kind of manage the product development side of that, so the developer experience, and we'll be looking at the developer center in some real detail. So there's going to be some cool stuff that'll come out of that in the next sort of 3 to 6 months, hopefully. So really looking forward to that. Cool. Anything from you, Adam?
No, just a quick look at Twitter. It all seems a bit quiet.
All right, okay, no worries. So Regan didn't do a great job of eliciting questions. Just kidding, just kidding. Okay, cool. Well, unless anyone has anything else that they want to talk about today? No?
Unless we want to dive into the rugby, but no.
Well, let's maybe wait for the next hangout for that one. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you very much, and thanks to everybody at home for joining us. Our next hangout is going to be mid-December, so we're going to skip the end of November and get a Christmas special in just before everybody goes on holiday. So really looking forward to that. As always, if you have any questions or any topics actually that you'd like us to raise or talk about in these hangouts, we're really keen to understand what those are, obviously ahead of time. Yeah, and you can do that through the community, user voice, I suppose, and on Twitter, or email us in any way you like to get in contact with us. Just let us know what you'd like us to talk about, and we're very, very open to that. So awesome. So that's all we got. We'll sign off and see you next time. Cool. Happy Halloween.
Yeah.